Well, it's getting a little warm. Not too bad. Not quite noon yet. Oh, I remember. I remember when I used to come here in the heat of the day. Wow. Years of coming here in the heat of the day. Only 10 o'clock now. And most days I don't come here this time, but early in the morning with all the other women. It's cool, pleasant, so lovely. It's such a blessing. But I know that you came here and to visit, and so it's nice to be with you. Brought my bucket. This is the same one. Folks often ask. I mean, you are followers of Jesus, aren't you? It's often the followers of Jesus who want to come and meet with me. Sometimes there's others. Sometimes there's those who have heard the story and I don't know. They're skeptics. I'm not sure I really convince them of anything. But I like talking to the followers of Jesus. I like hearing about how his word has spread and how his message is getting out there and making a difference in the world. So yeah, this blue bucket has been with me all this time. I had it with me that day when I met him, a long time ago now. But you know how it is in your life, that sometimes there are things that are present at a certain time, and so you hold on to them because they have kind of special meaning. I mean, this bucket's gotten some holes in it over the years, but I've just patched it up and kept using it. I have a friend, and she has a green laundry basket, and it was with her during a tough time. She keeps it. Not a pretty thing, but still useful. And you know how it is. It's not really anything more than the moments in our life, is it? Just these singular moments that make such a difference. Years and years can go by and there's nothing. But then there's these moments when everything changes. That's what it was like that day I met Jesus. I mean, I come to the well in the middle of the day. I'm not expecting anyone. And there's a man. Not just a man, but a Jewish man. Fine, well enough. This is Jacob's well, and there are travelers who wander through, not usually, but sometimes, taking the shortcut through Samaria. And there he is. And I think, why is he here? He might be thirsty, but he has no bucket to draw any water, and he's alone. Who travels alone in this desert? Who travels alone through Samaria? What Jew travels alone through Samaria? But the oddest thing is that he talks to me. That he says anything at all. And not just that he greets me, and not just that he asks for water, which I suppose would be expected, me having a bucket and him having none, but that he regarded my opinion, that he had a conversation with me as if I were, I don't know, his older sister, a woman that he actually respected, that he thought had something to say, had had a thought that mattered? How long had it been? Maybe forever. Since a man said a thing to me about what really mattered, that asked my opinion, that talked to me as one who worships God, and that a Jew would think that we Samaritans worship the same God, when of course we do, but because we worship God all wrong up on our mountain and not in the temple, they've written us off. They've said we're other, we're not like them, we're different, we're wrong. And yet that's not what he thought. He said we were one. Not just he and I, but his people and my people. One. It was like talking to someone who could see into my soul. Have you had that kind of conversation? Do you know what that is like when someone sees you, someone hears you, someone knows you for who you truly are, and someone I had just met? Dare I say, someone who loved me. I suppose you'll want to know about our conversation. Everyone asks. And they've heard what was said, that he told me everything that I'd ever done. Let me just say, it wasn't like he lined it out. It's just that he knew my story. And actually, it's not all that surprising that he knew my story. I mean, the women will talk. And there's a reason why none of the women in the village would come with me to the well or would let me come with them. I mean, I could have come, but it was all so awkward. As soon as I would come into a gathering, everyone would scatter. It was clear. And the women in town, you would see them. When they even saw me across the marketplace, they would gather together and there would be whispering. And I'm sure the whisperings in our town got to the next town and the next and the next. Not only is our town small, but Samaria itself is, and everyone's related, and you know how it is. Just one person tells another person, says, don't tell. They tell another person, and so it goes, and so it goes, and it's, well, like contagion. And so it isn't surprising to think that someone would know my story. It's just surprising to think that this odd Jewish man would. I'd had 5 husbands. And somehow, I don't know, that's a bad thing. I mean, in my culture, women don't decide. My first husband was given to me. He paid the bride price when I was 14. He was older. He took me away from my family, and he treated me badly. It was my lot in life. I should have known. I was just to be obedient. I was his property after all, and yet I ran away. I ran away much to the shame of my family, who had to give him back the bride price, much to the shame of all my relatives who would have nothing to do with me, much to the shame of my entire village. How could I? Had my father not beaten me enough when I was young? Did I not understand the role of a woman? Did I not understand obedience? Simply didn't want to die at his hands. Perhaps there's something wrong with me. Perhaps that was wrong. There was a family in town. I had one friend, and her parents took me in. The shame then extended to them, for how could they harbor me? And she had a brother, and within a year or two, he and I married. He had no means. The family had no means. We had nothing. But we were happy. We had each other. And some time passed, and I had a child. And some time passed, and the child died. And my husband's heart was broken. He was rather a slight man and weak in constitution. He came in from the fields one day, on the anniversary of our child's death, and he just collapsed and died. How does one bear that kind of grief? How does one live through it? And yet here I am. He couldn't bear it. One who helped me through that time was a dear friend of his who was of marriageable age and needed a wife. I could bear him children, so he married me. And 5 years later, out in the fields, there was a cart filled with rocks that they were clearing, and it fell on him. He never recovered. He died of his injuries. But his family did the right thing. You see, if you're married into a family and there are brothers and someone dies, you're married on to another brother. So I was married on to his eldest brother, his parents being gone, but his eldest brother being a widower and dying at the time, and very old, very much older than me. I nursed him, kept him till he died. And then there was another brother whose wife had died in childbirth, and I was married to him because that's what we do. How is any of this my fault? I was still of childbearing age, and that brother wanted a child so badly. We were together for 3 years, and I did not conceive, which is my fault. It's always the woman's fault when a child does not come. And so he did what men can do and set me aside for another wife who would bear him a child. He was kind enough. He found me a place to stay with an older couple in town who have a son who, well, is not quite right. He never learned to speak. He is rather simple, you see. The parents had to take care of him always. He never went out in public, and so now these older people had two who really were not welcome in society, but I could find my way to the well at noon, and I could help out and go to the market, and so I kept them till they passed on, and then, well, now I live with Joe, and I take care of him. And it's all right. He's pleasant. He can communicate his needs to me. And someone needs to take care of him, and no one else will go near him fearing he's cursed. And sometimes he gets angry and violent, but I can calm him down. And I love him as he is, and he loves me. But you see, none of the women will be around me, and nor will the townspeople, because I've weathered too much death and too much sorrow and too much loss. And who wants to be near someone whose life is just, I don't know, a walking tragedy? Who wants to be reminded of all of the difficulties of life, how children die, accidents, death, illness, divorce? No one wants that. I understand. I've learned to keep my distance, and yet here this rabbi comes and speaks to me of living water and gives me living water to drink. Because that's how that conversation felt. That's what happened when he spoke to me. Because when he said, "You've had 5 husbands, and the man you live with now is not your husband," he didn't say it with laughter. He didn't roll his eyes. He didn't mock me. He didn't shame me. The first person in my life who looked straight at me as if, well, of course, and you are loved. His eyes shone with compassion, not pity, but love. To feel that love is to experience living water. And I ran, leaving my bucket behind, I ran to the town and shouted at the top of my voice, "Come and meet this man who has told me everything that's ever happened to me. Could he be the Messiah?" Knowing that he was. And as you testify, even here after his death, that he is, that he is, that he is. And the people of the town, my brothers and my sisters, were so shocked that they came out to see. I ran home embarrassed at what I had done and trying to explain to Joe why there was no water. It wasn't about an hour later that I heard a commotion outside the house, and I was so afraid. I was so afraid that they had come to drag us out and stone us. Me for my blasphemy, and Joe, well, just because. I said, "Go to the back room, Joe," and I went to the door, and there the whole town was, with Jesus in their midst, with my bucket filled with water, which he handed to me. And they said, "Come out and eat with us." Eat with them. They said, "Jesus is going to stay. Oh, and bring Joe too." He didn't know what to do. He'd never seen so many people. And they welcomed us. My friends, the miracle for me was not that a Jew spoke to a Samaritan. It was not that a man spoke to a woman. But it was that the Messiah came and changed everything. Taught us how to move past shame and fear and division and all that separates us, and made us one. Sometimes it's the most surprising thing that brings a community together. Sometimes it's the most surprising and unthinkable thing that reminds us of our humanity, our shared humanity. Sometimes there are things that happen that act as great levelers, so that it doesn't matter our class and our status, our faith or our race. We are just human beings amongst human beings, brothers and sisters to each other and children of God. I think you know what I mean. And when those things come, they come unbidden. But they come for us to take hold, to remember again who we are, that we are made in the image of God, that God's light shines in and through us, and that we are meant to love one another. Thank you, my friends, for coming today, for coming to visit with me. Come into the town and eat with us. Here all are welcome. Each and every one of you, just as you are, no matter your past, no matter your present, no matter your shame.